All right, the sign of a good football team is closing out a game, closing out the season. LSU was able to do that. Possibly a good sign concerning a coaching staff is closing up the recruiting class at National Signing Day, and LSU pretty much able to check that box as well. We bring in Billy Gomilla from And the Valley Shook, SB Nation's platform for LSU athletics. Billy, let's talk about the class. It was a pretty decent day for Ed Orgeron and staff. I know that you missed out on one big timer, but brought another one into the fold.
Yeah, they started off the day by picking up a couple linebackers, Tyler Taylor out of Georgia, Caleb Von Chason out of Houston, and Jacob Phillips out of Tennessee, who had been committed, but they held on to him. Oklahoma had been pushing for him late. And that was pretty much the big position of need coming into this class. LSU's linebacker recruiting has really suffered the last couple of years, and they stocked up on some really good ones in this class. And Chason, Phillips, Taylor, Patrick Queen, who was a Louisiana kid who had been recruited for a bit, committed for a long time. They did miss on Willie Gay out of Starkville, Mississippi, who they made a big push for. But, you know, Mississippi recruiting right now is really tough. And the kid was from Starkville. He went to Starkville High School. Mississippi State's right there. You know, it's just tough to beat that kind of short distance for a kid like that. And he probably steps in and starts for them day one. So, you know, it's a great pickup for them. The big miss, of course, was the defensive tackle Marvin Wilson. You know, it's a loss because he's a really talented player. He's going to do really, really well in Florida State, I think. And Ed Orgeron had been recruiting him for 2 years now. So it's a loss, but it's a loss that LSU can manage. They've got a lot of depth at defensive tackle right now. It's a position that Louisiana produces with some regularity. He would have made this from a very good class to a great class, but it's still a very good class, and you really can't complain too much. You addressed your big needs. You got some playmakers out of it, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Probably one of the best linebacker classes in the country, the absolute best safety class in the country, that much I do believe, and two very good quarterbacks who are going to battle it out for you.
Yeah, I heard comparisons to Eric Reed mentioned a few times today. I also know that the class started at the back half of the top 10 and maybe didn't necessarily make the top 5, but made a strong push, knocking some people out of the way during the day and picking up some of these recruits. So LSU was definitely at the forefront, along with USC, of the talk of the day in terms of rising into that top 5 range. Definitely look at the class in regards to the guys that stand out for you, guys that may hit the field. You mentioned the linebacker haul, and obviously that being a weakness, so those guys are going to be counted upon probably more than any other unit on the field.
Yeah, definitely. Jacob Phillips, guy who can push for playing time very, very quickly as a true freshman, big, you know, college-ready size in that 230, 235-pound range. Guy who can run, show some very good instincts, I think, in coverage, things like that. You know, Caleb Von Chason, kind of the heir apparent to Arden Key, which also means LSU has the luxury of not having to play him right away, kind of let him sit and put some weight on. Spectacular athlete in that 225 range who, you know, could maybe play in a year or two at that 235, 240, 250 range. The safety class, to me, are the real game changers. You know, they picked up Todd Harris, who was a 4-star kid from nearby right here in Plaquemine, and he's kind of the gravy because they had 2 other guys named Jacoby Stevens, the 5-star, the #1 safety in the country, out of Tennessee, out of Houston, who were not only, you know, big-time recruits but already enrolled on campus. And Stevens, in my opinion, will play in the NFL in 3 years. He is that good. He will play very, very quickly. Maybe even the kind of athlete that gets some snaps on offense, possibly. And then Delpit's very, very good. Not quite as good as Stevens, but extremely good. Big, tall, rangy guy. Can kind of do a little bit of both, play that center field role and also come up in the box. And then you had Tyrus, who had an offer from Alabama, you know, could have gone almost anywhere he wanted. little more of an in the box type of safety, but that's the kind of player who sees the field a lot at LSU on special teams and sub packages and things like that.
Billy, I got to say what struck me today, because LSU was in the mix for many of these players, and so the LSU talk was at the forefront of the national coverage for most of the day, was some guys mentioned that, for example, they were staying with LSU due to Les Miles recruiting them a couple of years ago. And obviously, he's only been out of the mix for 6 months, and that Ed Orgeron was able to keep that commitment. Other guys mentioned, hey, LSU sold me, period, regardless of who the head coach is. The game atmosphere is just electric. The atmosphere in general regarding the football program and the tradition and just the fan support is just so overwhelming. Other guys said, hey, LSU would have been in the mix, but Ed Orgeron, his energy, his inspiration, and just making me feel at home. And so it kind of proved to me that there's no exact formula to this. You gotta kind of tailor the message and the approach to the kid and what's going to bring them in.
Yeah, and part of what was impressive about this class is that it did survive a coaching transition without a lot of major defections and losses, and which is something that you see all the time in these situations. And a lot of that is testament to the role that Ed Orgeron played in recruiting most of these guys. He still was kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit. They didn't take any official visits during the season, which he did, both kind of gambling on himself to get the job and closing strong, and also as kind of a courtesy to the next coach that, hey, if I don't get this job, at least the next guy will be a little bit set up to help close out with this class, and that really helped. That was it was tough, and maybe it cost them with someone like Marvin Wilson, who did get to see Florida State during the season, and didn't quite get to see get the whole official visit experience at LSU, but and that's what's kind of going to be the thing to watch next year is now it's Ed Orgeron doing this his way from the jump, not working within Les Miles' framework and then starting to do things his way later on. It's a good class. It's a good positive step forward, I think, for the program, and now kind of that it's through and that they salvaged it. The first step forward into what really is the Ed Orgeron era. Is he gonna make some more staff changes? Maybe we may see that. There's still an opening for a special teams coach here. There's always a round of coaching changes after signing day.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs out there with coaching changes that would like to be able to salvage it, like LSU was able to salvage that, because this is the type of LSU recruiting class that we've come to know and love out of LSU. Freakishly athletic, very fast, just athletes all over the place, and that's what LSU brings to the table. All right, Billy Gomilla from In the Valley Shook. Anything else for us, Billy?
No, I think we covered it all. It's a strong class. It's not quite Alabama, but then who is? They're number one for a reason, and you're not going to eclipse that overnight. And I'm interested to see what Coach O does with this next group.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.